We are back with another episode of the Walk-On Redshirts. This time we have NFL Draft Edition. Yeah, we're not an NFL podcast, but you know what? The NFL Draft, it has enough stuff. And, you know,
Draft is
William
essentially
wants to talk
college
about his
football, right?
Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. I don't want to be in pain. You know, I want to focus on college football, but the NFL draft is essentially college football, right? I mean, it's just like
I mean,
college football.
you're watching all your favorite guys like move on to, the professional leagues and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, and every team has a first round pick, right? Especially the ones that are supposed to be picking first but aren't.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, if there's 33 franchises, then sure, yeah, you could say the Panthers are picking in the Super Bowl spot right here. Like
That's
one
right. That's
pick-
right. We
yeah,
are technically better than the best team. We're picking after them, one spot after them. So
it's true.
we're kind of the
You
best.
could trade with them.
Speaking of the college football and being the best, Jake, can you tell us how you bested a college football talking head today in a community baseball game?
Yeah. So obviously, if you don't know, I coach baseball, and our opponent, one of the coaches, was Joey Galloway. It was a back and forth game early. We played 5 innings, weather and impacting it. First inning, they go up 3-0. We come back, score 2 in the bottom of the first, go back and forth for a little bit. After the third inning, it's 5-4 us. Then we score 9 runs in the bottom of the fourth inning.
Yeah.
Go
Whether
up.
it'd make me quit too, Jake. That's Joey Galloway's tears.
Joey Galloway was not having a good time over there. He was criticizing the umpire. He wasn't having a good time. They went through a bunch of pitchers. Just wasn't his day. You know, he probably should stick to football.
That's right.
Baseball, not his thing.
Hey,
you know, I walked over because I was saying something to the coaches, and I was like, I think that's Joey Galloway. But I didn't realize he still lived in Columbus. You know, I know a lot of these guys just move wherever. I didn't think he lived in Columbus. And I came back, and my players were like, Coach, that's Joey Galloway over there. I was like, okay. And then one was like, can I go get a picture with him? I was like, no, absolutely not. We're about to play a game. Like, you're not getting a picture with Joey Galloway before the game starts.
This just in, Joey Galloway's house is for sale in Columbus, Ohio, after what Jake did to him.
They are all moving.
Yep, they're moving. Nice.
They can't stand to show their face after losing in a middle school baseball game.
Yeah, I'm surprised Joey Galloway has time to play baseball with all the crap going on. It's just stuff is still going on in college football, especially spring football overreactions. So, who's winning the national championship? Miami? After watching Cam Ward, is Miami winning the national championship?
No, but I'll be honest with you. If they don't make the playoffs this year, all I'm gonna say is like, it's just never gonna happen. Like, they finally actually have a good quarterback, Cam Ward, and like the spring stats, when I look at them, like, I don't put a ton of value in them necessarily, but like, it is nice to like kind of go into a season like being like, oh shit, like we actually have a quarterback who is capable of, 1, being electric, and 2, potentially leading them to their first ACC championship since they joined the league 2 decades ago.
That's still wild that they have yet to win an ACC championship, but like,
let me
basically
tell you,
every team has made it there.
That is wild.
Yeah,
I know. You know who I think's winning the national championship after spring ball? Ole Miss. I mean, they couldn't have put a more better product on the field. Watching their spring game. I mean,
can we talk about Lane Kiffin's strategy for going after transfers? Did you see the tweet that Lane Kiffin put out when the transfer portal opened?
No,
it was a bunch of cheerleaders with a dog.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, with his dog.
Yeah, it was a bunch of cheerleaders and a dog, and it was just like, come to the sip.
Could you imagine anything else from the guy who had a hot dog eating contest at the spring game?
I mean, Lane Kiffin is one of a kind, iconic. I don't even really know how to put it. He just always finds a way to get attention without doing too much. I'm trying to find the one when it opened, because it was hilarious, where it's like he was clearly going after, and he also like retweets things that are just trying to stir it up.
Yeah, like some random teams winning basketball games or baseball games or softball games. He'll go and retweet it or like it or like comment on it. Joey Freshwater is he's a specimen. He's
It
a
was
specimen.
sorority girls. My bad. Sorority girls and his dog, and said Juice Kiffin. He loves the sip. Good old Lane Kiffin.
I do wonder with Lane, like, how many more years are we going to do is he going to go somewhere else, or will he actually just stay? Because it's already started with Florida, where it's like, well, they're already planning on him to be their next coach next year. They're ready to cash out the season and just kick Billy to the curb. And now it's already started where it's Lane to Florida. It was Lane to Miami. It was Lane to Auburn. It's, the Lane to Alabama thing died very fast, but
I don't think Alabama wanted Lane Kiffin. He was pretty far down the list. They would have to get.
His agent's pretty busy. That's a good agent.
Yeah.
That guy's got his name in every hat.
What is like, what job is better? Like at this point, like, is Florida a better job than Ole Miss? Is Miami a better job than Ole Miss? Like, are some of these jobs like on par and like going for a pay raise, or are these actually like better jobs? Like there are some, like, if Texas were to open, I think Texas is a better job. Not Sark would need to leave, but like if Tennessee were to open, like he's not going back, but like, is that a better job? Is South Carolina a better job? Like,
yeah,
he's not going to leave the SEC or the South, so he's going to stay in the South, really. So it's like it would take like Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas. To me, those are the four jobs that are better.
A lot of it comes down, I think, just to, the new age is basically like, what's your NIL? Like, what are the boosters? Because that was the whole thing with him and Ole Miss for the longest time, was they're not giving we need more money. Like, that's why he's flirting with other jobs. And then you see what they do in the portal this year, where they basically just opened up a fresh, credit card and like went shopping on tons of players. We'll see if it works out for them. But now that it seems like maybe this is a one-off, but it seems like now that they're at least opening up the coffers a little bit, like the Ole Miss job's probably on par, with Florida at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I think the brand is equal at this point. It's almost been 20 years since Florida's been relevant.
Yeah, they haven't been relevant since Urban Meyer left. So I don't know if that is a job. I mean, especially with what you've got right there, they're still bringing in solid talent, still recruiting pretty well. I mean, he'll need a quarterback next year, but how he's using the portal, he's going to find one.
Yeah, for sure.
The transfer portal in the spring, though, I mean, Josh Pate, and there were a couple other people that kind of hinted that this was going to go nuts. I don't know about you guys, but I think that this has been pretty mellow overall. There's been a couple surprises, but there hasn't been like many like, holy crap, like guys that were in the winter that just, left. I think more of the surprises are guys re-entering the portal.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a lot more low-key, and I think this is going to be more of our norm going forward. I think stuff's going to start settling down. People are going to start understanding, what does the portal do for me? What can I do for the portal? And you'll have guys like, obviously I'm closer into Clemson's camp, like with Zechariah Owens and Adam Kisiai, both entering the transfer portal. Well, both those guys are young guys. Both of those guys were not recruited by the coaches that were their position coaches that are there now. Kisiai was a little bit different because he was a early enrollee from December, participated in bowl practice, participated in winter workouts and spring practice. And then Zechariah Owens was the guy, got recruited, by the last regime, and Thomas Alston comes in, doesn't pan out, doesn't get playing time, really early. He's now a sophomore. What's he going to do? He leaves to go start somewhere else. I think we're going to start seeing it as when a coach that didn't recruit him, it's like a tryout. And the guys that they didn't recruit, if they don't like them, see ya. Like, and in some place, like in a place like Clemson, they're not walking those guys out the door. Now you got a place like Colorado that's like, hey, dude, you suck. See ya. They will take their scholarship.
Coach Prime is packing your bags for you.
Yeah, I feel like the Colorado model is going to stay the Colorado model. It's going to more align with the intensity of the transfer portal that we're used to from the past couple of years. But I think the more norm will be a Clemson situation, a Georgia situation. Maybe not Miami. It looks like Miami's lost a couple of guys recently, but I don't know. Were they going to be contributors? Did they not pan out? Were they not being coached by their position guys? I'm not that close into that program.
They were, I mean, along the defensive line, the two big ones, Nigel Kelly and Jaden Wayne, I think both went in. Kelly, I had fairly high hopes for, and he contributed a little bit. I don't think Wayne contributed much, in their time there. But it's mostly just like there's so much, they're still searching for depth in the transfer portal now for like experienced veterans on the line, but they brought in like a ton of defensive linemen and pass rushers and stuff in this last cycle. They've been focusing so heavily. They did offensive line. Mario's first full cycle was a huge offensive line one with Malagoa and all them. This time around, it was a lot on the defensive line, building out the trenches. So like it was more so like, if these guys go, maybe they move down a level, maybe they go to a place like Colorado or even like an Alabama or something like that, where a team needs to fill spots. Maybe they can get coaching and live up to the hype, but like it just felt like they were kind of like in a big log jam with a lot of newer talent coming in. A couple guys like Ruben Bain, who came onto the, flashed a lot last year. He's now solidified as a starter. So I think it's more so like, going to search out for playing time somewhere that they can actually maybe start or even get more than, 15% of the snaps over the course of a season or something. So not huge losses for Miami in either case.
Yeah.
I think the most surprising one to me so far was Keandre Lambert-Smith out of Penn State.
Yes.
I really didn't understand why, but apparently, at least the Penn State fans, this wasn't that big of a surprise. Kind of feels like that Julian Fleming came in and kind of took over the number one spot, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, a little unhappy about that. Hasn't seen a ton of production, new offensive system. So not that it was like a mutual party in ways, but it wasn't a, we're forcing you out. It's, okay, that's not too big of a deal. But the concern for Penn State is their wide receivers weren't very good last year.
Right.
No. Well, their quarterback wasn't either. So like
Drew Aller didn't play very well, but their wide receivers weren't getting separation. Keandre Lambert-Smith was one of the only guys on the team that really contributed throughout the year. So now they're looking for other guys. And, Julian Fleming was a good player at Ohio State. Didn't really have the best season with Kyle McCord. I'm interested to see what he does because he's not really a game breaker. He's definitely more of a possession receiver. And he's taken a lot of injuries. So it's hard to imagine that he's going to find a way to play 12 games this fall. Is he going to play 8? Is he going to play 9, like 10? He just seems to find injuries. It kind of sucks for him, but it's hard to think that he's going to play 12 games this fall.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about this too. I feel like all the conversations around the transfer portal, and I know this is a draft podcast, so I'm sorry we're spending so much time on this, but I was thinking about this spin zone. Positive note. I feel like a positive thing that's going to come out of this transfer portal wild west is that I think we're going to develop more rivalries. Obviously, we have a lot of rivalries in college football, but I think we might get some new ones with some guys like a Cormani McClain leaving Colorado, saying terrible things about him, and then going on somewhere else.
He just shredded Colorado, but he also kind of shredded himself too.
Yeah.
Basically said that I was going there for clicks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw how the recruiting aspect kind of like played out there. Like
where he was going to Florida State or Miami or Florida State or Miami, maybe Georgia, and then all of a sudden it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Colorado.
Yeah. Last minute, but so it's not surprising. Like, I mean, when he came out, like that was kind of like the thing on him was like, well, they weren't sure he was going to play his true freshman season anyway, because he's real like raily and stuff like that. So you kind of worried about him going against physical receivers and stuff, like maybe like red shirts, or you play him sparingly and then he bulks up and then you have your guy in the season after that. And That's why, like, yeah, when he went to Colorado, I was like, okay, like, not missing anything the first year, but what's he going to do down the line? There was some, like, you never know when some of these guys do the last minute flip and stuff like that. Like, and when you're flipping the Colorado and Dion, it's like, is this kid doing it for the right reasons? Is he doing it
Right.
for, so I mean, I think it's good for him to get out of there and maybe like try something different. Because it does feel like that was like a last minute, like, I'm doing this for, for the views, like, basically, like, I'm last minute flip there, doesn't play, and now he can kind of go out and see what's out there. I suggested, I don't know, he hasn't committed anywhere, correct?
No, not yet. It sounded like there were some potential visits, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, I saw USF. I think that would be a good one because, as I mentioned before, like, DeMarcus Van Dyke was like his lead recruiter for Miami. They had a good relationship. He left to go take an on-field job a year or two ago, and now he's the secondary or quarterbacks coach for USF. So I think if he goes like somewhere like that, like smaller level, work his way back up, be in with a comfortable like guy that he knows, like former cornerback, I think that would do a lot for him, like moving forward, and maybe hop somewhere up the ladder down the line.
Jaden Rashada is another one that had a very weird recruitment claim. Committed to a couple different places, signed with Florida, got out of his national letter of intent, goes to Arizona State. Just kind of all of weird thing. Played a decent bit. Kenny Dillingham put out tweets in support of him. So I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it sounds also like Arizona State is now getting their sanctions from Herm Edwards and Antonio Pierce. So maybe that has something to do with it.
That gets me all fired up again. Like, all right, Herm Edwards and Antonio Pierce do some dumb shit. Now
Antonio Pierce is the head coach for the Oakland, or I guess the Vegas Raiders at this point. He's the head coach for the Raiders. Like, you can't punish this guy with a show.
And isn't like Herm Edwards
penalty.
like back on ESPN too, or something like that? Like,
neither of these guys are going to be coaching in college. Like, giving them a show cause penalty is comical.
Yeah, it's stupid. And Jalen Rashada, if I remember correctly, he's the one who was offered like buku's
like
$10 million, and then they're like, yeah, I remember we said that. That was not true. I could see why he'd leave Florida, or back out of his intent, his NLI, not to be confused with NIL.
Yeah, they really screwed it up by putting those three letters in the same and then just switching them once. All right, let's jump into the NFL draft. A lot happening this week. So I don't want to go through your whole mock draft, Aaron, which will be coming out when I finally get a chance to post it, which will be probably tonight or tomorrow. But anyways, it's safe to say that the Bears are taking Caleb Williams 1, right? Aaron, you're the draft analyst. You know what's going on. You have a decent idea here.
Where does the draft start?
I mean, I guess technically at this point it starts at 3. I mean, Caleb Williams, he took one official visit. It was to the Bears, like, basically, like, there was like Bears fans doing like Zapruder like film stuff of like him meeting with the coach and stuff like that. And the coach
should the Bears wear a 1 patch on their jersey in memory of Justin Fields?
Yes, just to make the 50% of the fan base who, even after he was traded, still claiming that he was the future of the team. Like, yes.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought you were making an OJ reference right there with the one over your heart. I thought you were saying, OJ 1 of 1.
R.I.P.
And then beyond that, I think obviously we won't know officially, I guess, until it comes out. It's a similar situation to the Zach Wilson to the Jets. Like, it wasn't official, but like everyone kind of knew that that's who they were taking, and that's how it kind of feels with Jaden Daniels in Washington now. So I guess it really starts with New England at 3. They might trade down. They basically need everything on the roster. Like, it's a completely new whole thing.
JJ McCarthy screams New England Patriot to me. Just like screams New England Patriot.
He screams Mac Jones to me. He's Mac
exactly
Jones 2.0. I mean, he just doesn't kick people in the nuts.
Look, No, I give JJ at least credit because he is at least a plus athlete. Like,
Yeah, you got that.
Mac Jones is a negative athlete.
yeah, like Mac Jones is the only time he's running is if he can like cleat you in the balls. Like,
Well, hold on now. In the 2018 national championship, they let Mac Jones run a fake field goal,
No, fair.
and he got blasted by our defensive lineman Niles Pinckney, who ended up transferring to Minnesota. It did not work out well. I don't know if you remember Nick Saban losing his mind out in San Francisco. Had to get my Tigers in here somehow.
Of course,
Oh,
because they're not going to be in the first round.
yeah.
Hey, Nate Wiggins.
Oh,
Yeah, that's true. Wiggins should go in the first round. I don't know if he will or not, but he should. But yeah.
What do you think the prediction of the quarterbacks is, and how many quarterbacks do you think go in the first round?
I think 5 go, and the reason I think a 5th one goes is teams seem to covet the 5th-year option you get with the first round pick. So that's why you see like the Ravens traded into the back into the 1st round to get Lamar. You see that every so often. So it wouldn't shock me if a team like Las Vegas, the Broncos, unless they trade future assets, aren't going to be able to do that. They don't have a 2nd round pick because they traded, I think that's the one they traded for Sean Payton. And so like maybe a team like Las Vegas, who I think they pick in the mid 40s in round 2, trade back.
Round 1, they're in 13, so they would need to.
Yeah, they could take Penix there, but it's a reach in my opinion. But I could see them like potentially like trading back into a team like Buffalo or somebody, even like a team like Arizona in the back half of the first round, like maybe like trades back or something. And they trade up to take Penix and get the 5th-year option on them. So I would go 5. I think it's tough. I would say 5 just because I think a team will trade up to get Penix in the first back half of the first round.
Who are the 5? Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix,
Drake May.
Drake May. Duh.
Who
do you think JJ or May goes first?
I think May goes first because I do think the Patriots will probably take May. I think as much as they need a lot of things and they could potentially trade with Minnesota so that Minnesota can come up and get a quarterback, I find it hard to believe after how bad their quarterback play was last year that they're just going to, they signed Brissett and he's like a quality option. Like he'll give you decent games, but I'd be surprised if Kraft sits here at pick 3 and says, and allows them to just basically not take a quarterback. Cause not only that, but like in future drafts, you don't know where you're going to pick. Like I suspect they'll be 4th in AFC East again this year, but future drafts don't look good quarterback wise right now. Like next year, you're looking at Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers, like guys that have like
Carson
some
Beck,
traits.
I guess.
Yeah, Carson Beck will be up there, but like you don't have a Caleb, like even Drake May, like talented, might take a little bit to like finally find his groove in the NFL, but like is still probably a better like top end talent than either of those guys in the future. Like, so I'd be very surprised if the Patriots, like if they do decide to stick there, if they didn't take Drake May there. And then I think Minnesota or somebody's going to probably end up trading into the top 6 or whatever to get McCarthy. I think like Minnesota struck the deal with Houston to get their 1st round pick so that they had the firepower to trade up and get him if they need to, and they might.
Who are the realistic teams to take a quarterback? Like which teams are actually going to take a quarterback and aren't just blowing smoke?
So, I mean, Chicago and Washington, obviously. Yeah. Minnesota, I mean, if Minnesota leaves without a quarterback here, like, I don't know. It feels like they've set up basically to say either we're going to take him at 11 with our pick, or we are going to have the firepower to tell any team ahead of us, if another team calls you, we will one up that offer to get the quarterback. That's what it feels like their moves were set up for. So I think you have them. I would be kind of surprised, I think, if Vegas left without a quarterback. Denver traded for Zach Wilson, but like I even have in my mock like 3rd round, like Bo Nix, like Sean Payton's said that he kind of compares in some ways to like Drew Brees, which kind of hints that like maybe he wants him, but he's also not a first round quarterback. So like he's a guy that they could get later on. But in terms of the first round, yeah, it's those three are confirmed, I think. And if the Patriots don't take a quarterback, then you'll see Vegas or Denver end up getting a quarterback somewhere in there. So you have at least four that I think are locks to go.
Do you think the Rams could look at somebody, like especially towards the back half of that first round?
So I was listening to another podcast, and when they mentioned this, I was like, wow, that's freaking perfect. The Rams, if they're sitting there, I don't know exactly what their draft capital is, but if they're sitting there in the third round and there's one name is staring them in the face, Spencer Rattler.
Oh, Jesus.
Might be like that's like a place where Rattler could go under that offense and probably kind of thrive. So,
all right, I got a fun fact for y'all. Did you know that this is Sean McVay's? This would be if they don't trade out, this would be Sean McVay's first round pick as the head coach with the Rams.
Yeah, I saw they haven't had a first round pick since like 2014. They haven't used a first round pick.
Yeah.
It's Jared Goff. That is insane.
Going almost a decade. Or I guess it's a decade at this point. So quarterbacks, talked about that. There's definitely been some chatter in the wide receivers because there's definitely three top tier guys. You got Neighbors, Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm guessing that's probably the top three. I don't think there's really much debate on that unless
some people really like Brian Thomas, and I mean the physical traits are there. I would not put him in the same stratosphere as the other three though. I would put him probably in the B tier with the AD Mitchells, the Xavier Worthies, Keon Coleman's, like all of those guys in the next tier down. But yeah, I think it's pretty consensus that those are the top three guys.
Who do you think is the first one to go out of those three? Because there's definitely been some chatter about Neighbors being, potentially the top guy. And where do you think the first receiver goes?
So, I mean, like I said, I still think the Patriots go with a quarterback. They could be in play to either, maybe take Harrison if they decide to.
Please don't. I'm good. Please don't take Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I'd rather they just have Drake May, and I'm sure I'll regret that in like 5 years. But, but I do think like some people have talked about like the Cardinals at 4, like the Vikings trading up there, but like the Cardinals have so much draft capital this year that like if I were them, like I would just stay at 4, like unless the Vikings like come with like just an insane offer, I would just stay at 4, take the receiver, make Kyler Murray happy, and like you have so many other picks to like build out the rest of your team. Like they do need basically everything on both sides of the ball outside of quarterback. But I do think the Cardinals are probably like stay put, and I think the Chargers are more likely at 5. Like they need a wide receiver really badly after they just gutted the room. But Harbaugh doesn't believe in wide receivers and passing the ball.
No shot he takes an Ohio State guy, right?
Yeah, there's no shot. His first pick would be Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Now, granted, he's seen him up close in person, so he knows exactly what to expect out of him. But there's no chance he would take an Ohio State guy with his first pick, right?
WWCSB, what would Connor Steins do?
I will say one thing, like I think the Chargers will ultimately trade back anyway. I think they'll be the team that trades with Minnesota because I think they want more assets and to like I think Harbaugh just wants to rebuild the whole team basically in his image, outside of like Herbert. But now if he really believed in JJ McCarthy, he would trade Justin Herbert and draft JJ McCarthy. But anyway, yeah, I think they'll trade out. So I don't think they'll take a wide receiver, but I do think Harrison's, we do this thing every year where like the draft takes place so far after the season ends. And then everyone starts looking at everything. dissecting the smallest things. Like, I get it. Like, Harrison's not like the burner that like maybe Neighbors is, but like he's so hard to guard. Like, he's very clearly not the number one.
But Aaron, Caleb Williams paints his nails.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why
He cries after football games.
Exactly. And that's why, he's going to be a bust according to every Green Bay Packers fan you'll talk to.
Yep.
But yeah, I think 4 with the Cardinals is where we'll see at least one go. I think the Giants will probably take one, and then probably either the Falcons or the Bears will probably take the third one if I had to guess. Unless like a team trades up, there's certainly a possibility a team trades up to get a Dunes. I would guess a Dunze will probably be the third one of the 3 off. I think it'll go Harrison, Neighbors, or Dunze, but I think all 3 of them will go top 10.
You got to think about this too. You forgot about this with quarterbacks. Green Bay, they got to start thinking about the predecessor or the person who's going to succeed Jordan Love. You got to have the backup already. You got to
give it. You got to give at least like 5 to 10 more years before they do that, and then another like 4 before they kick him out. So
yeah,
he has time. He has time.
Get him now, so you can have him ride the bench for 14 years.
That's true. That's true.
When do you think the first defensive player goes? Because it's clearly an offensive heavy draft with skill players. You've got quarterbacks, you got wide receivers, you got a couple offensive tackles up there. There's not like a clear cut, like this is the defensive guy. He's going to be a top 3 pick, top 5 pick. Like, where do you think the first defensive player goes?
I would guess Atlanta. I mean, I'm not really saying anything nobody else knows, but I think Atlanta probably either Byron Murphy, Dallas Turner, or one of the cornerbacks from Alabama, or Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. I think they'll go one of those.
If Toledo has the first defensive player off the board.
I mean, I'm fairly certain he is a former 5-star recipient. I believe he had a game either last year or the year before where he had like 3 interceptions or something. I mean, he's an insane athlete. He's very productive, like very good player. But I think the Falcons, like, they maybe go at Dunze, but like they need defensive help, especially at corner and at pass rusher. They haven't had like a good pass rusher since like John Abraham more than a decade ago. So if I had to bet, I'd say Atlanta's probably going to go with a defensive player there. I have him with Turner, but the edge class is like so close together that like you're like throwing darts at a wall trying to predict which one's going to go where. And
but
what
Cooper DeJean has a chance to make Will Compton proud in Rashard Mendenhall's Whites versus Blacks. The Team Whites are getting Cooper DeJean, NFL player. Don't need Christian McCaffrey to play both ways.
That's right. We're going to be good. Nick Bosa.
Will Compton has a chance to add somebody else to the roster there.
Yeah. Wes Welker or Julian Edelman won't have to come out of retirement. We're going to be good.
Yeah, no, I mean, DeJean, dude's a super athlete. And now with the new kickoff rules that they took from spring ball, like he's going to have added value for a team that takes him because he was a punt returner and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, he's
Iowa
interesting.
Fans are still mad about that.
Fair, I guess. But
he took away 7 of their 34 points of the year. So
didn't realize they scored 34 total.
Nah, that was a shot in the dark, but it's probably accurate.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Brian Ferentz is proud of that number. He's proud of putting on a whole 34 points last year.
That's really what I'm going to miss about the early 2020 Iowa thing is just that every week being like, oh, Caitlin Clark scored more points in a season than like Brian Ferentz scored as OC over the course of like multiple years or whatever. Like all those fun stats. It's just like, yeah, the singular women's basketball player is so much better than every offensive player you've put on the field for a half decade. Like
pretty pathetic. Pretty pathetic. So who are some players? I mean, I know a lot of us know know who all the skill players are, but there's plenty of guys who fly under the radar. Plenty of guys that we don't think that are going to be. Who are some guys that you think might end up sneaking into the first round? You know, whether it be stretches, whether they're just undervalued.
In terms of guys, so I don't want this, but like I already said, like when he ran his 40 time, Xavier Worthy was the.
Oh, he's got Raider written all over him.
Yes, he does.
Now,
yes, he does.
That's the old Raiders. The new Raiders are a team that plays in Miami who love speed players. And there was a lot of like videos and stuff like that, like McDaniel talking to Worthy and stuff. I don't think they'll actually take him, but if they actually took him at 21, I would be like, okay, like I get it. Like they took A-Chain last.
We're running 4 verticals all game long.
Basically like do what they did for half the year last year. I don't think they'll actually take him, but like he's a guy, I think he's more of a second round player, but I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on how the wide receiver run happens, like you have the Bills are in the back half that need a wide receiver. I think the Lions could use a wide receiver, but I think they need more of like a Keon Coleman type because they already have Jamison Williams. They need more of a bigger guy.
So
the Chiefs, obviously.
Is Xavier Worthy, is he going to drive as fast as he runs? I mean, we got a nice little trend going with fast guys that not too far.
A little, but
everybody lived. Rashi Rice is going to jail.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know his driving history. I haven't contacted State Farm to see if they've been in contact with him, but
and he doesn't play for Georgia, so we got that going for him.
That's true. That is a plus in his.
And as long as you don't coach at Michigan, you're not going to get DUI as well.
Oh, quick update on Iowa's offenses. Do y'all want to guess how many points they scored last year in total?
Oh,
I'll give you a hint. It was 132nd out of 133 teams.
Who's worse?
I don't know. I'll have to look that up.
I can probably find. I'm gonna guess that they averaged like 17 points a game. I don't know what that comes out to be.
I'll tell you, it's less than 17 points a game.
That is so sad. Like that's incredibly sad. Like, what is it? Like 200 points?
15.4 points per game for 216 points of the whole year. They were 132nd out of 133.
And the fact that there was still questions about whether Brian Ferentz should be fired.
And they probably should have been 131st if Cooper DeJean would have scored they would have kept his touchdown. That was not a fair catch.
Kent State was in last.
Kent State, baby.
14.7.
Can't read, can't write. Kent State, baby. Shout out.
14.7 points per game. That is actually 1, 2, 3. They had 5 games scoring less than 10 points.
I love it.
Now they scored 38 in a win against Central Connecticut State.
Hey, listen, don't sleep on Central Connecticut State.
I don't know if Central Connecticut State even knows where they are.
Somewhere in Central Connecticut, I would guess.
One player that I'm shocked that has fallen down draft boards a little bit further, Brock Bowers. I thought like he would be top 10, like guaranteed.
It's the Bijan Robinson thing where it's positional value. Like you're like, okay, like this guy is a very good product for a position that doesn't traditionally go one as high as he is, on the list. Like, so like similar to like last year, I said Bijan was the most interesting player in the draft because you just never know where he's going to go. He's going to go in the first round, similar to Bowers, but like, does he fall farther down? Like he's a willing blocker, but he's not a really great blocker. Like you're not looking at him as like a George Kittle type. But yeah, he's such a dynamic athlete in space and like being able to get open basically anywhere that like it's a crapshoot on where he goes. Like I think the earliest he would go is probably the Jets at 10. Maybe the Bears would take him, but I think they just locked up Cole Kmet. I don't know what their offensive situation is going into this year. I think like the interesting one that like I put him to, and I haven't seen mocked much, is like the Colts at 15. they've invested a lot of mid to late picks in tight ends over the last couple of years, but they just don't have like a top end tight end. And they do need more receiving threats for Anthony Richardson. They have a couple decent guys, but like they could definitely use more talent there. So like it is like a kind of a crapshoot on like where he's going to go, because it almost feels like a team that doesn't have like a dire need for a tight end is going to have to make that call. Whether it's like the Colts, the Seahawks, the Bengals. Like I don't think he'd fall to the Dolphins, but the Dolphins need more tight ends. Like he's going to go in the first round. It's just it's a positional value game, and the fact that there's wide receivers that are also like very high definitely kind of hurt him a little bit too.
Well, I'd even add to that. So you talk about Kyle Pitts, who goes fourth, right?
Yeah.
And Kyle Pitts can't block, but Kyle Pitts was such a dynamic receiver. He was so fast. You can afford to, like, I feel like Brock Bowers is a one-trick pony, but he doesn't even he's not like a Kyle Pitts. He doesn't have that upside of Kyle Pitts on the receiving game. So like, why would you go so high on him?
And they're completely different receiving threats too, because Kyle Pitts is like a taller, like, he is like an athletic freak and stuff like that, but like, he's a bit more taller and more in space. Like, whereas Bowers is more of like a space monster. He's speedy, he can kind of get to where he needs to get, and you'll be able to like count on him like for 5 to 10 targets a game, like fairly easily. But
why is Ladd McConkey going to be a future Pro Bowl wide receiver?
He's going to be a first rounder. That's what I'm hearing. He's going to be a first rounder. I wouldn't doubt it. Todd McShay.
Yeah, I mean he's just really good. I mean that's really all there is to it. Yeah, I mean I could see, depending on where he goes, where he matches up with, like he might go in the first round. Like there's so many wide receivers in that like second. Brian Thomas is probably like 4, but like like he'll, how that bucket kind of goes with Coleman and Worthy and Mitchell and McConkey and all them and Leggett and all them. It's going to be really interesting to see, because they're all kind of grouped together. McConkey I could see, like, I think in previous ones, I think I've had him to Carolina because they're going to need wide receivers pretty badly.
Adam Thielen's not that old.
He's old. He's old. And they drafted Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss last year, who just didn't really give them anything this year. So, I mean, I think there's a decent shot he ends up in Carolina. Kansas City, that could be an interesting one, though I think they might go with like a more speedy guy.
San Francisco, if Ayuk doesn't come back.
That's another one that they could look to if they decide to trade off of him. I mean, there's a lot of teams, just at the back half of that first round that are going to be looking for wide receivers, and even the early second. Like I think I actually have them 34th to New England in the mock draft, with them taking May in the first, because they're another team. Yeah, exactly. Like the ideal New England offense.
If Tom Brady was still with Tampa Bay, I would say he's a huge Tampa Bay guy. But I can San Francisco and Kansas City is where I see, if he's going to go first round, that's where he goes.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Who is the best running back, and when does a running back finally go off the board? Because it's kind of a weak running back class this year. Like, there's some
Brooks, right?
Good guys, but like there's nobody that's like clearly a top, first round talent.
So, I mean, I guess it's probably either Jonathan Brooks from Texas or Trey Benson. I think I have Trey Benson as the first one off. I've just seen more of him, and like he killed Miami and stuff. So, but I think like you're probably looking at like around like pick 50 maybe is probably like the earliest you see, like maybe a couple picks before. But I mean, I don't think any team's like really going to be rushing. Like the Cowboys need a running back, so I wouldn't be shocked if maybe they take, the Texas product in the second round. I mean, shit, I throw, maybe the Chargers just say screw it and he takes Blake Corum and like with the second round pick. Like
It wouldn't. It's
like,
not. No, it's not going to shock.
he's
me at all.
leaving there with a Michigan player. Like at some point
He's
in that
gonna
draft, there's
draft
at least
multiple.
one Michigan.
Roman Wilson, Blake Corum, JJ McCarthy, future Chargers.
Yeah. So
Just
yeah.
trade Justin Herbert to go
You
get
heard, it here,
JJ.
you heard it here first.
Yeah, I mean, you hype him up so much. But
I feel like JJ
yeah.
McCarthy is this year's what's the dude's name last year? Will Levis. And Aaron, I want to hear your insight on this too. Not to go back to the quarterbacks, I'm sorry, but I can't get over JJ McCarthy and all this hype of him going to the first round. It makes no sense to me. And I know it's a high.
He's like the betting favorite right now to go number 2.
Which is insane.
Well, those are always because Will Levis, it was the same thing last year. Like the week before, like somebody with a fucking sportsbook advertisement or whatever, like decided to like say like, oh, Will Levis is being talked about at number 2.
That's bait.
And yeah, and then he went in the second round. Like, and it's just like, okay, like, yeah, I don't.
Another one. It's like,
yeah,
I put him in that echelon of Will Levis and Malik Willis. I think I did not see anything on the field last year. The one time I was like, wow, watching JJ McCarthy was in the national championship game when it was 3rd and long and he ran the ball 15 yards or whatever to extend the drive when they were down like in the goal line. That's the only time I said, wow, that dude. I never saw him throw a football and I never said wow. And Caleb Williams, I did. Drake May, I did. Michael Penix, I did.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll say with McCarthy is like, so he had that one play against Alabama where like it was like the throwback to him. It was behind him.
Never got completed.
Yeah.
And somehow he did.
And he like yeeted like the perfect pass like to the guy. And like that's the kind of play where you watch him and you're like, I don't think he's ever like nobody's ever gonna say like, oh, I think this guy's gonna be, the next Brady or whatever, like the greatest of all time. But those are the kind of plays where you kind of watch him and you're like, okay, like the athleticism's there. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he has a strong enough arm to get the ball where it needs to go. A lot of it's decision making, and a lot of it kind of just is on Michigan because they just never like. I don't think they didn't trust him. I think it's just the way Harbaugh likes to operate, like the game.
They didn't have to
running the ball. Yeah, like you watched against Penn State, they ran like 30 straight run plays or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like with him, like I get it, and like that's why I think like if he goes to Minnesota, that's a perfect place. You have Kevin O'Connell, former quarterback coach, all this stuff. They run like a Shanahan McVay type scheme that's kind of like easy on the quarterback. Like I think if he goes there, like I still think Chicago's got a good enough like supporting cast. I think Caleb Williams is obviously the rookie of the year favorite, but if he goes to Minnesota, like that's a really nice place for him to land, and he'd have Addison and Justin Jefferson to throw to, TJ Hawkinson, a decent offensive line. Like I think like if he goes to Minnesota, like I think that's where you see like the flashes of the good stuff.
Yeah.
Where you kind of limit him a little bit. You don't need him to be the Mahomes type, like doing everything style player. But yeah, I think there's enough there that like I said before, like I'd probably take him in the second round if I had like the entire thing. But if you have like an idea of what you want to do with them and you have a down the line, like step by step of how you want to progress his game, I could see why a team would take him and invest in the picks in him. I think there's enough there. I think it's more so that Michigan just never really allowed it to fully happen. Even against Ohio State, he had a lot of really good throws like that. You like never anything that's like super eye popping, but enough that like ultimately won them the game down the stretch. So,
but if you're taking a guy in the first 5 picks, you're betting your job on it. I just can't see someone putting their job on the line for JJ McCarthy. But somebody
put their job on line for Zach Wilson. So.
Exactly. And Trey Lance.
And then they got insurance with Aaron Rodgers. So
yeah, but the Trey Lance one, like those guys are all still employed. Like the craziest thing is that they've gone to like 2 Super Bowls since they drafted, or maybe just one since they drafted them.
NFC Championship games. So
Yeah, like I mean, it helps when you draft like a great seventh, Mr. Irrelevant, but that can like operate the system. But like, um, yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think they'll be fine regardless. I think they're pretty well liked there. I think it's more so that you just have to trade up because they need a quarterback. Like I think I forget. I think it's Sam Darnold or somebody is their starting quarterback right now. Cousins left. They got to get somebody. Like you can't like punt the season and hope like Dak or somebody like hits free agency next year. And you can't count, like I said before, like you just can't count on future draft classes because they don't look right now. They don't look good. So
They've made it really obvious they're taking
Kyle McCord is going to be draft eligible and going to the NFL draft next year. So I think everybody.
Well, he's not going. He's not going to be going to the NFL draft because he's not going to be a high enough pick to get the invite. But he will be technically eligible for the NFL draft after a year at Syracuse.
He will be exhausted all of his eligibility technically.
Maybe go back. Jordan Addison, he's on the all-speed team as well. We got a nice wide receiver group going, so got to see who's going to go. Who we're going to get this year.
So one more question, and then we have one listener question. Between Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu, which one goes first?
Joe Alt. I think it's just like I think he's like the better like overall. Fashanu's like a good pass protector, pretty decent run. But I think with Joe Alt, like I just think it's the pedigree. I think his dad was a former player. Obviously Notre Dame puts a ton of offensive linemen in the league year in, year out. And I think he's just the most polished product at this point. Like, so I think like if the Chargers stay there, I think they'll take him. If not, it feels like written in stone that the Titans are going to take him because they need offensive line help. But yeah, I think it's Joe Alt. I'm not even 100% sure Fashanu is even the second offensive tackle off the board, to be honest with you.
You think it's the guy from Oregon State?
I think Fuaga could. I mean, it depends on the team. Like the Jets maybe take Fuaga because you can play him at guard early and then move him to offensive tackle. They signed Tyron Smith and another offensive tackle, Morgan Moses. I think they traded from Baltimore. But you can't rely on either of those guys to start the entire season. So maybe you play him at guard, similar to what the Dolphins originally did with like Laramie Tunsil when they drafted him, play him at guard, kick him out to tackle a year later, or if you need him to. Fountain though from Washington, I know is another one that's going to be up there. Amarius Mims from Georgia. Like there's a lot of offensive tackles that are going to go in the first round. And I think after Alt is where it kind of gets tricky. I think Fashanu's probably the best like long-term tackle out of this group. But I think depending on what teams prioritize, it's going to be kind of interesting to see who goes where. JC Latham from Alabama is another one that's going to probably go in the first round. So yeah, once you get past Joe Alt, it's going to be kind of an interesting.
Do the Bengals finally get Joe Burrow some protection on the offensive line?
Well, fun fact, they have, I don't know if this is factually accurate or not. I'm going to say it is. I think they have like the biggest tackle, like in terms of size and like the history of the NFL. Like I think they signed Trent Brown, who's like 6'8", 350 or something. And they already had, I think, Orlando Brown.
Yeah, they have Orlando Brown too.
Yeah.
But
so like they have two massive dudes. They do need to end up like picking a couple more offensive guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Newton or Johnny Newton or Byron Murphy on the board. I think they'll go maybe defensive tackle. They're a landing spot for Brock Bowers if he's there. They don't really have they signed Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki stinks.
Speaking of the Bengals with interior defensive line, fun fact: I was in Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. I played with DJ Reader, so I shot him a text. Said, "Hey man, I'm in Cincinnati for the week. You want to meet up?" And literally an hour after I sent that text, it was announced that he signed with the Detroit Lions. I was like, "Oh, guess we're not meeting up in Cincinnati."
Yeah. Well, look, man, he signed a nice big contract. It's on him. Bill's on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can pick up my tab, dude.
Yeah.
All right. One more listener question, and then we'll get out of here. Jake Thigpen asks, remember a GM one time say in an interview that the value of the draft class is determined by day 2 picks. Are there likely later round picks that you think will be early contributors next season?
It's always hard. Like, I don't know. I can't really say for sure that there's anybody I see that like I think will contribute like right away or make huge impacts. But I mean, it is true. I mean, that's where you build the base of your roster essentially. Like we've seen it from New England for years. Like over the course of their run, they would trade back a lot, acquire a lot of picks, and then like use that kind of like to fortify the under part of the roster, and maybe churn some guys up if they progress and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it is like it's super important because yeah, I mean, you gotta the biggest thing in the NFL, especially as they continue to expand the season, is depth. And if you can hit on those late round guys, one, it's cheaper assets like for the first couple of years anyway. But yeah, I mean, those are that is the foundation of a roster. What you build underneath because your guys are going to get injured. Like it's just pretty much a sad fact of the NFL at this point. But
I'll tell you two guys. So, like, for the one caveat I'd say is the most likely to get on the field are two positions of early on will be wide receiver, running back. All the other, I mean, and obviously quarterback, but the guys drafted late are not likely to see the field. There's not many Russell Wilsons walking around over there get drafted out of the first round and play. But the other two will be wide receiver and running back. Running backs are so common that come late that end up starting or at least contributing a lot. And then wide receiver is obviously the same. And if you want to talk about two guys that I love that are considered late, I don't know what you would consider late, Aaron, but Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. I don't think he's a guy that most people know about. I think he's a freaking stud. I want to say he's 6'2 plus. No, he's 6 foot or 5'11. Can freaking run. Uses his body really well. I go back to the Old Dominion game, watched him in bowl season. I mean, he's phenomenal. I think he's a really good player and will definitely contribute next year. If it's not just special teams, it will be in a slot position. And then I like to really go off the wall on you for a running back. I like Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. I don't know. I think he's a really good runner, but I think he catches the ball pretty well, and I think that's what sets people apart. Ray Davis is another one I like out of Kentucky, but I think
Ray Davis was a little too streaky for me this year,
yes. And he doesn't catch the ball very well.
He had games where he would blow up, and then he would have other games where he was averaging like 2 yards a carry. He just wasn't hitting the holes very well, and some of that isn't always the running back's fault if the offensive line doesn't give you any holes or doesn't provide you, but just a little too streaky for me. But I could see him finding a spot in the NFL.
Right. And then if you want to go like talk about a tight end, I love Jatavion Sanders, but he's probably going to go in the second round. That's not too late. Linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Obviously I'm biased, but dude, I mean, he just flats out.
It's the Clemson guy.
He gets after it. I mean, he's an effort guy. So like those guys get on the field, whether it's special teams or not, like he will be a contributor. And then if you really want to stick with Clemson, a guy who really showed out in the combine, who's projected to go third, fourth round, Ruka Rororo. This dude started 3 years at Clemson. And say what you want about Clemson's offense, that defense has been top 10 every single year, and they are a defensive line factory. And this dude started on Clemson's defensive line for 3 years. So that they don't just that's not random. The last two defensive linemen that got drafted in the third round from Clemson, Grady Jarrett, DJ Reader. They both ended up being pretty good in the NFL. So I think this guy, could end up doing something very similar. So the two biased guys and then the two non-biased guys.
Yeah, I think he could. I think he'll probably go in the second round if I had to guess. Rook will. But that's another position. Like defensive tackle is another one where there's like a lot of like this tier 2 second day guys that are all going to kind of be like mishmashed together. Who has who on top of the board? But I do think I think I had him going to Houston or something in the second round in mine. But yeah, I mean Trotter. I wrote down like a nice like list of like sleeper guys. When it comes to running back, early contributor. He's not going to give you anything in the passing game. But Braylon Allen, I mean, injury history is, a little sketchy the last couple of years. Like, obviously, when he bursts on the scene, everyone goes, wow, we're going to have a first round running back again. And like, it just last couple of years, a little disappointing, but like, he's still, 20 years old. He's a big dude. He's got some speed. He's good in space, just not going to contribute in the passing game. But if a team like the Chargers or something, like, for whatever reason, they don't take Corum, they need a running back, like, or a team like the Cowboys or something, like, he could easily like get like early carries in the season. The flip side of that, pass catching back Blake Watson from Memphis, gonna be like a 6th or 7th rounder, I would guess. Catches a lot, like 90 catches in his 2 seasons, one at Old Dominion, one at Memphis. Smaller dude, never going to be like your main running back, but like I definitely think he could give you a lot of like that James White style, where it's just like maybe you give him like 5 touches a game out of the backfield and then have him catch 5 passes as well. Wide receiver, I have Malik Washington from Virginia. Went to Northwestern before, transferred over to Virginia this year, had like 110 catches. Tiny dude, he's like 5'8", but like I think if you get him in there in like a slot 3, 4, 5 like position, give him a couple touches a game as an under guy. Same with Jacob Cowling from Arizona. I think is probably a 4th or 5th round pick, I would guess. Dude caught 31 or more passes in all 5 seasons of college football he played. Like, he just gets it done. He's not a plus athlete, but he's a guy who I think a team, like especially one that has like a solid quarterback, could like bring him in, play that kind of like small role, get a couple passes here and there, maybe contribute a little bit, but not anything like super crazy. But I also had Trotter on my list as well. I like him a lot. I wish he was a little bit bigger, I think, weight wise. I think he's like a little under 230 is what he weighed in at, but I think there's a lot there, especially if you're getting him in like 3rd or 4th round, I think is where it'll probably go, because linebacker is similar to running back. Like, I don't think you'll see a linebacker go off the board until at least like pick 40, if I had to guess. But yeah, so
Wilson might go. He could go.
I think Peyton Wilson, probably the best linebacker in the class, but man, his injury history is ugly, and that's going to turn a lot of teams off from drafting him much higher than like pick 50, I would guess. But yeah, I mean, he's such a talented player. It's just, do you invest? I think he's a little bit older too. Like, it's that one's a tough call with Wilson.
Jake, you're sitting there and you have
one guy I wanted to talk about, because I mean, I saw him play a decent bit this year, was Cody Schrader out of Mizzou. I think as a very late round pick you're going to get a good player out of him. He's definitely not an incredible athlete. I mean, if you don't know his story, you can go look it up. Walk-On, got a scholarship, whatever it was, to like delivering pizzas or DoorDash or whatever he did. He was incredibly productive, workhorse for Mizzou this past year. He's pretty small though. He's only 5'8". The combine had him at 5'8.5". So, but I think he can find a role, especially with how the NFL rotates running backs these days. Not too many have just dedicated one guy. Times have 2 or 3 guys that rotate in. I'd be interested to see how he does this year. It sounds like he's going to be a pretty late round pick.
Well, too, like a good point. I don't think it's going to like boost like the positional value in terms of like the top end guys, but there's a lot of speculation now with the new kickoff roles. You'll see a lot of teams using like depth running backs in that spot. So like, I think a lot of these guys could maybe like try and like carve out a role there, maybe just because it's more so like an actual football play now instead of just like the weird like gladiator battle it always has been.
Scared to put anybody out there because you don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, like, so I think you'll see some teams like maybe like they take a running back late that they think that they can plug into that spot and say, I mean, I don't know what Schrader's like passes with returning and stuff like that, but yeah, guys like that I think could formulate. A lot of teams carry 4 running backs anyway, so like you could end up seeing the team, end up just getting a guy and maybe trying to use him in a spot like that, or even just as like a blocker or something in that those schemes and stuff. So,
is Joe Milton going to be the next Cam Newton?
no, no Joe Milton. No,
but he can throw the ball like 90 yards.
So could Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah. No. The only late round quarterback I have any interest in adding to a team is Michael Pratt, and that's just because he's a gamer. Might win you a game if you spot start him here and there, but outside of that, like
it's
and Rattler,
Rattler
too.
Jake,
once you get past those guys, it drops. I mean, Jordan Travis, I guess maybe you could think about him as like just a depth backup guy. But after that, you're looking at guys like Devin Leary, Brennan Armstrong, Austin Reed, Keaton Slavis, Taluia Tungavailoa, Spencer Sanders, who didn't even play at Ole Miss after he transferred, Sam Hartman, was viewed as a system quarterback at Wake Forest.
I'm already prepared. I'm already prepared for Talia to be on the Dolphins practice squad. Like I've already kind of just assumed that's going to happen.
I would be pretty shocked if that doesn't happen.
Hey, Jake, your GM is 7th round, and you got to take a wide receiver based on their name. I'm going to name you 3 guys, okay?
Okay.
Joshua Cephas, Bub Means, or Ladietrich Griffin.
Bub Means.
Oh, yeah, you got to go Bub Means, right? Got to have a guy named Bub on your team.
Just a culture guy.
All-time locker room guy, Bub. I mean, could you imagine like just being able to walk out on the field, like, hey, what's going on, Bub? Dude,
and that
would brighten my day.
I will say my favorite player, one of my like top 3 favorite players in this draft is a guy who could go anywhere from like pick 30 to pick 100, I would guess. I have no clue where he's going to go, but I freaking love watching this dude play. Jake, I know you hated watching this guy play. Mike Sainristil from Michigan.
Oh my God.
Tiny.
The only reason he's good is he knew where the ball was going every time.
Yeah. Dude is 5'9", 182. He's small as shit, but he is a bulldog out there. And he just has a knack for figuring out where the hell the ball's going.
Yeah, knack because you know where the ball's going.
And listen, man,
it helps when you got 3 years of knowing where the ball's going.
Nobody's in prison. Let's not treat him like a criminal. But yeah, I love his game. His size is gonna turn some teams off, but I think in terms of just what he's put on, tape and stuff like that, he is one of the better cornerbacks in this class. It's just a matter of the size thing is definitely not great, especially against bigger receivers in the NFL. But I'd love to have him on my team. Like he's just that type of player that
he knows how to read calls from the other team.
Yeah, speaking of D-backs, one guy
he can read, so that's a good thing. Like that's putting that a plus in the scouting book.
He can read Connor Stallion's notes. One guy I really love that's a defensive back late in the draft. I don't know if he'll be an early contributor, at least not on defense, maybe on special teams. But Malik Mustafa out of Wake Forest, that dude can freaking ball. I hated going up against him, and Wake Forest is never known for their defense. That dude set the tone.
It's weird because their defense always sucks, but they always have like pretty decent defensive prospects. They had Boogie Basham a couple years ago. They had Mustafa and Kalen Carson, their cornerback this year. They had Kobe Turner went like 7th round and was like one of the best rookies in the league for the Rams last year.
Aaron Curry, going to go way back.
I mean, he was on the Riley Skinner team. Like the happiest I've ever been as a football fan in half my years isn't even a fucking Miami team. Like imagine that. But yeah, no, I like Mustafa a lot too. The safety class isn't very good, but there's a couple guys I like. Mustafa's one of them. Bias alert, Cam Kinchins.
I was going to say Cam Kinchins can freaking ball.
He's not a great athlete at all, but like 11 interceptions in 2 years. Like he has a like similar to Sanderson. Like he just has a knack for knowing where the ball's going and getting there. He'll probably be like a 3rd round pick. Maybe he goes earlier in like late 2nd, maybe in the 4th. But I think that's just something like when you see it, it's like, oh, like there's value in getting a guy who's productive that much. And then Cole Bishop from Utah, safety, pretty decent athlete, a little stiff, but like productive, was a great leader on that defense the last couple of years. He's a guy I think will probably go in the 3rd or 4th round, but I think is a guy who can contribute fairly early and for a long-term success. Maybe not like a Pro Bowler every year, but like a decent starter.
All right. Well, that's all that I have for tonight. Is there,
real
is there anybody
fast.
else you want to talk about?
One last guy.
Okay.
Draft day on Saturday, day 3. Taylor from Iowa, punter. I mean, we all have to rally. We all have to rally and get him drafted. Like he's gonna get drafted somewhere. I'm fairly certain, but like, similar to a couple years ago and stuff like that with Stout and them. Like it's gonna be interesting to kind of see where Iowa's best offensive player for the last 4 years ends up in this draft.
I thought you were going to say Draft Day by Kevin Costner. But
I mean, you should probably watch that tomorrow.
The worst sports movie ever made.
It's really not a good movie. It's really
so
not a good
bad.
movie.
I loved it when I saw it in theaters, just because like if you throw like the word drafted for like anything, I'm just like, oh, outside of like war, like hell yeah, like and like yeah, rewatching it like years later, it's just like this is god awful. Like,
why would anybody ever trade the 6th overall pick for 3 seconds?
None of the moves make any sense. Like he was gonna take the stiffest linebacker you've ever seen, number 1. Like when they play the Vontae Mack highlight
Vontae
tape,
no matter what,
it's the worst tape I've ever seen of a player. Like it's so bad.
But why did nobody go to Bill Callahan's birthday party?
Yeah, I mean that's the most realistic thing is like they're doing like the Caleb Williams paints his fingernails. It's just like, oh, why did nobody go to this dude's birthday? Why did nobody go to this 22-year-old's birthday party? Like, I don't know, like because he's 22 years old, he probably wasn't having a birthday party. What do you mean?
Butterfly effect, because Kevin Costner didn't do well in the draft, he ends up moving back to Wyoming or Montana, and becoming a cattle rancher, starting a farm at Yellowstone, and now, he's doing phenomenally at over there. So it worked.
And earlier in his life, he was a minor league baseball player in Durham, North Carolina.
That's right. He was a rookie, really good rookie.
Yeah. All right. I think that about wraps it up for tonight.
And on that note,
I think we're going to end there. Don't watch Draft Day. If you really, really, really want to, go for it. But you can if you want. Or you can just listen to the draft podcast. And tomorrow you can check out, well, I guess it'll be today when this actually comes out. You can go check out Aaron's final mock draft before we get in there.
Yes.
3 rounds. 3 rounds.
3 rounds and
3 times.
I predict 5 minutes before it gets released is when we get news that like Minnesota is trading up the pick 4 or something. That's what I did. I wrote it over the course of the weekend, and the entire time I was like writing it down. I'm just like, please God, don't make the trade now. Just wait until the actual day. Like, don't ruin this for me. I don't want to have to redo everything.
Just please let me get this in here so that way we don't have to worry about it.
So check that out and forward all complaints to Will.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, he is our complaint manager. He is our customer service rep.
I will answer them all right now. I have a big complaint. Jake sent me a nice pint glass that and it was shattered. So whoever did that, I wanted to enjoy a nice crispy boy yesterday when I got out. I was so excited. Wrapped it out of the 94 layers of bubble wrap, and it was shattered. And now I'm shattered.
As somebody who works in like a warehouse and I see the way boxes kind of get thrown around, like that's one of the reasons why like I don't think I've ever purchased even like a whiskey glass online, because I'm just like I do not trust this getting from point A to point B without it being in 1,000 pieces. Like
that's fair.
Not a shot.
That's fair. But there will be some new merch coming out. I'm going to have some new stuff here posted here soon for everybody.
And it's in one piece when you buy it.
Yeah, it'll be in one piece. If you buy it, it'll be in one piece. Make sure to check us all out on social media. You can find everybody on social media. Go to Walk-On Redshirts. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Twitter's the main one. You're going to want to check that one out. Make sure to check out all the latest podcasts, and we will be back here again in a couple weeks to recap heading into the summer. And then soon enough, we'll be previewing the conferences, Power 4.
Yeah, I can't wait to figure out who's where and what's happening. And
a casual Rutgers versus Oregon Big Ten game and a SMU versus Cal ACC game.
This is the most lost I've ever been going into a season because once the season ended, I was just like, I'm not doing college football stuff for like 2 months. And now that I'm starting to like trickle back into things, I'm like, I'm lost. Like, I don't know what's going on anywhere. Like, also, hopefully, Damian Martinez to Miami. That's the last word I have.
Prayer circle for you.
Prayer circle.
Joey Galloway as well.
Yeah. Also for Joey Galloway, who now has to move out of Columbus.
All right. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you again soon.